Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all here today for Maine Media's Alumni Network presentation with Allen Moore. We're delighted to have Allen with us. I'm Wayne Beach, chair of the film program at Maine Media. This talk is being recorded, so if you don't want to be seen, turn off your video. Those of you who made donations to the series, thank you. Your support allows us to not only offer this series to you free of charge, but also allows us to offer hundreds of workshops annually. And indeed, we have an extraordinary array of workshops coming up, both online and on our Mid-Coast Maine campus. Starting May 1st, we'll be presenting an online cinematography master's lecture series with a stellar lineup of major cinematographers and filmmakers doing presentations of their work. Details are on our website. And our spring on-campus workshops began this Monday. Starting April 28th, I'll be teaching a one-week on-campus workshop on film history called Storytelling in Light and Shadow. And this summer and fall, there's an embarrassment of riches on our campus. Workshops and summer intensives in photography, cinematography, directing, nonfiction filmmaking, creative writing, book arts, editing, and much more. Allen has been producing, directing, photographing, and editing his own documentaries for more than 40 years. He's also served as a director of photography for several of Ken Burns' films, including The Civil War, Thomas Jefferson, Lewis and Clark, The Journey of the Corps of Discovery, The War, The National Parks, America's Best Idea, Mark Twain, and the Roosevelts, An Intimate History. His independent films include The Shepherds of Berneret, Black Water, A Sheepherder is Coming, and Albert Alcalay, Self-Portraits. He's a recipient of numerous awards and honors, including an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography for his work on baseball. His cinematography on the national parks helped it win a Primetime Emmy Award. And in mid-September, we're delighted that Allen will be leading A Sense of Place, a one-week workshop on our Mid-Coast campus. He can tell you a little bit about that later on, and we'll post the link to the details in the chat thread before the end of the session. But right now, please welcome Allen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to a Zoom meeting. I'd much rather see you all in person, but this is the age of access through the internet, which I'm excited to be able to speak with you all. I have a number of little clips to show that kind of exemplify the work I've done over my career, not only producing, directing, and editing my own documentaries, which are sort of focused on an ethnographic approach to my subjects, but also working for public television for a number of directors. Ken Burns, yes, but also his brother Rick Burns, I've done a number of films with. Another gentleman who's well known to the Maine Media people, Larry Hott, I've collaborated with him on many, many exciting stories. A little background to what got me into this career. I picked up a still camera in high school, found it in my mother's back closet. It was just in a box, and it was an old little Leica, a rangefinder camera that she had turned out. I never knew she had been had a hobby of still photography when she was a young person. And I said, well, hey, let me play with this camera for a day and see if I can get it to work. I ended up becoming obsessed with black and white still photography. Saved my own money to buy a Nikon FTN and started shooting everything I could with a 24 millimeter wide angle lens. I just love the idea of exploring the world with my eye and grabbing moments. All black and white, all photography. Film trikes negative, which I would process and print myself. So when I went to college, I went in through an art program at Harvard University that had a number of different elements. Besides a still photography track, they also had filmmaking. Now, this is back in the 1970s, and video was virtually non-existent or not available. So we were working in 16 millimeter film. And the added element of time, using audio, and also working now in color, it just opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for me. I did a 4-year program, learned all about working with the Bolex camera, and by eventually an ARRI BL camera, which is a sync sound camera, and eventually an Aton, a more up-to-date, a more modern sync sound camera for that period. All through that time, I was making little short films, and I knew that, I could continue, just be satisfied with that experience, because shorts are really challenging, and they're also just they're within the grasp of an independent filmmaker, without a big budget. So that was my particular station in life at the moment. Very, very low budget. Um, but I had the opportunity through Harvard to work on a longer format project, an hour-long documentary. I was invited by Robert Gardner, who at the time was a famous, well-known ethnographic filmmaker and taught at Harvard, and he also ran something called the Film Study Center. There, he helped promote young filmmakers and sent them out on different assignments. I got the fortunate experience to go and live for 11 months on a little island in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, and to document the way of life of the Gaelic speaking community of shepherds and fishermen. It was mind expanding. It was just so awesome. Not only were the community, over time, learned to accept these two crazy American filmmakers. I worked with another gentleman named Jack Shea. We collaborated. He did sound, I did camera. We co-directed the film. But in a Gaelic speaking community, very rural, traditional, two guys, one with a big Stellavox quarter-inch tape recorder slung over his neck, and me with a ARRI BL tromping through the marshes and the hills chasing sheep, was a sight to see. But the community came to accept us, and were very, very willing to let us film everything that they were doing. The result of that film, of that project, was a film called The Shepherds of Berneray. And it was an hour long and sort of my breakthrough film in my career, because it led to lots of other opportunities, including a Guggenheim Fellowship. Um, but part of the interesting relationship I had with the film was that it was not just about the people, but it was also about the place. And I started to see how important visualizing a place is to telling the story of the people that live in that place. Because without accepting or without being aware of the environment that we all uh, work through, live in, and work around, you're missing a important part of life experience. So I'm going to show you a clip now. It's about 2.5 minutes long, and it's a little scene from The Shepherds of Berneray. And one of the elements that I think you'll be aware of is how um, the frame and motion within the frame is integral to sort of the way I see the world. Now, bear with me, because I'm now going to attempt to go and share um, with you all my screen. And I'm going to go back, whoops, to, does everybody see the main screen? Is that
Yeah, right
visible?
now the main screen is black, but we see
Great.
it.
Okay. Now, do you see a title?
No.
Oh, shoot. Weird. Screen is paused. Oh, it's being recorded, huh? Let me try. Let me try sharing again. Sorry. Okay, it says to go to VLC, share.
There you go.
You see a faint
Yep.
title?
Yep. We
All right.
do.
Okay.
Of course, I was the oldest son, and to keep the craft going, I would have to come home and give my father a hand. This is the third generation from 1900. My grandfather, my father, and myself. Up to 1846, there were about 300 of our population on the island of Paddy out there. And they were evicted because they weren't able to pay the rent that the proprietor expected of them. It only applied to Berners from 1854. That's when they were evicted from this island. The proprietor he wanted to rent it to a single individual, a sheep farmer. So he evicted the people from their holdings here. There was about 700 of a population on this island then. Oh, no, it's just about 100 of a population on Berners.
Sne schaunde je kushel a kluche gestrin. Rein uch keren je voeter ko papa mo har huandan. Am feren ga je stoa besors suastone fei. Should the holy mother be thanking you in your watches? Come forth the harsala marvarlo kunim. Sam fauna valin kahul tukhurikana. Afenda kursara sanwarich foer. Anusha counts na spere na shine lunya gleste. Kunya hound kaishuk no ye sinaj. Hachi la dunya bakviale sayal. Marvauler la kuye hayan skule kubra.
Okay. Whoops. Whoops. What am I doing here? We're stop screen share, right? Okay, good.
You're back on. We see you.
Good. Okay. Let me just get myself oriented. Yeah, so basically that film weaves the story of the life of the community over a whole year. And when we were finished with it, it showed at festivals, and one was actually the New England Film Festival back in 1982. And I was still working as a cinematographer for people in New England, and decided that I was going to move back to where I grew up in Maryland, and moved back where I am now here in Maryland, and realized I had to find local work. And I read in the local Washington Post actually that there was a company starting up a new film project in DC. And it was a company called Florentine Films, which I kind of think I'd heard of a little bit about, but uh, they were the head of the of the company, Ken Burns, was going to do a documentary about the history of the U.S. Congress. So I cold called the Florentine Films office, and I said, could I speak with Ken Burns? And Ken was on the other end of the line, and he said, "This is Ken." And I said, well, "Hello, Ken. My name's Alan Moore, and I'm a local cameraman down in the DC area, and I see you're making a new film. I'd love to be available as a cameraman if you are interested." And he said, "Are you the Alan Moore that made The Shepherds of Berneret?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "Well, I saw that film and it's amazing. You're hired." So, for all of you aspiring filmmakers, or even those who are looking for extra work, make sure you follow every connection, because this was just a cold call that changed my whole life trajectory. I got hired by Ken to shoot all around the US Capitol, in all sorts of weather in every season. And as well, piggybacked on that experience working around the Capitol building. And those were the days when you didn't need permits even. I mean, I literally could walk up to the Capitol with my 16 millimeter Aton camera and start, you know, doing great shots of the sunset over the hitting the dome, and no policeman would walk by and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Nowadays, it's done nothing like that. But as well, Ken was working on the Civil War. And so I started, because I was in the Mid-Atlantic area, I started doing a lot of visiting of the various Civil War battlefields, um, and got to know a lot of the history through being in the landscape. One of the things that I think is important, or at least I understood in my relationship with Ken, was he never showed me a script. He never asked me to go get a shot. He asked me to watch the light, do what I did in Scotland, and just absorb the landscape, make it a poetic image, make a move, do a tilt, whatever it is that will reveal the space. And I took that, as a real, challenge, but also a great compliment from Ken that he was trusted me to go out and just find the images that I was inspired to gather. I look at it kind of as a way where I was providing for his editors kind of a poetic phrases that would be able to be woven into a historical narrative. And many of the great scenes that Ken produced, I provided image, but I had no idea till the film was finished how it would all work out. I'd like to now show you a little clip from the Civil War. It's not the kind of most famous clip that many of you may have remembered, the letter to Sullivan Ballou, which is all about this incredible letter that this soldier wrote to his wife before going into battle, the battle in which he didn't survive. And in the end of that sequence, there's some shots of a cannon on a horizon with the sunset behind it. Those are shots I did, I'm proud to say, in Manassas battlefield back in like 1986. The clip I'm going to show you is one that sort of relates or tells the story of the death of Stonewall Jackson. So you'll see again another way in which images that I gathered were, used by Ken and his team. All right, let's try a share again. Okay. I got to go back to. Everybody see the head screen again?
Yeah, it's black again.
Oh, black again. Gosh, I don't know what's going on
Yeah,
here.
you probably need to go out of share, pull up the image that you want to share, and then share screen.
Okay. Not working now?
Yeah, we see your landing page with the list of the cinematography.
Perfect. Okay, here we are now. The Civil War.
Chancellorsville was Lee's most brilliant victory and one of the costliest. 13,000 of his
There's no
men
image.
were out of action.
We hear the sound, but there's no image.
The man that concerned him most.
All right, I don't know what's going on here. Oh, I see. Wait a second. Share. Let me try that again. Now
Yep.
you see
Yep.
image
Yep.
of
Yep.
a gentleman.
Yep.
Oop. Let's try it now.
Chancellorsville was Lee's most brilliant victory
Okay.
Yep.
and the costliest. 13,000 of his men were dead or out of action. But it was the loss of one man that concerned him most. Stonewall Jackson seemed to be recuperating. Then on Sunday, May 10th, he took a turn for the worse.
The scene is in a bedroom in which he's coming in and out of consciousness. Pneumonia is what he died of, not the loss of his arm. And his wife got there to be with him. And the surgeon, Dr. McGuire, told Miss Jackson that her husband would die that day. And she told him, said, the doctor says that you won't last a day out. And he said, oh, no, my child, it's not that serious. And then finally she said, you'll be with the Lord this day. And he went off into some sort of sleepy delirium. Pneumonia affects people in strange ways. And he called the doctor and says, Dr. McGuire, my wife tells me I'm going to die today. Is that true? And the doctor said, yes, it is. He said, good, very good. I always wanted to die on a Sunday. And when they offered him brandy or morphine, he said, no, I want to keep my mind clear. And the last thing he said is sort of, he wandered in his mind. He was calling on A.P. Hill, prepare for action. And then all of a sudden he was quiet, very quiet for a spell. And he said in a clear, distinct voice, let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the tree, and then die.
The death of our pious, brave, and noble General Stonewall Jackson is a great blow to our cause.
Okay. So we're back to me.
Yep.
Good. So, as you can see, the storyline, clearly the narration of Shelby Foote carries this dramatic weight, a very, very beautifully, expressed moments of Stonewall Jackson's passing. The images I shot were just at a sunset at the home where he died, out in the middle of Virginia. I don't even remember the town, but it was kind of a simple structure that was preserved by the National Park Service. And inside were all these relics from the 1860s of medical paraphernalia that would have been used to treat the sick. And I couldn't get in. Actually, I was able to get into the cabin. I had no lighting, so I was just relying on sunlight. And I just luckily was in the right place at the right time when the sun blasted through the one open window, and I was able to shoot all the images that you saw just within an hour or two, not knowing anything about how it would all be put together. But as you can see, it's quite a dramatic moment, and it really does speak well to the skill of the editors in finding a way to piece the imagery together to tell the story. One of the things that actually Ken always insisted on reminding me is a quote that he had heard from a famous 20th century architect, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. And that quote was, God is in the details. And for sure, if you look at all the archival photographs that Ken has used over his many films, he doesn't just do a wide shot. He makes sure that you go into the details of the still photograph to tell a story. And I think that was the same way he wanted me to look at the landscapes that I was in. It wasn't just a wide shot of the house where Jackson passed, but the reflection of sunset in the glass of the windows and all the other details that you saw. So that's sort of been part of my practice, is to look for the details.
We have a question from Bruno in Switzerland, and while we'll reserve, I think, most of the general questions for the end, as you're talking about the different things that impact your view of place and how to communicate it, and I know you don't, typically work as a sound designer on the projects you're doing, but how, Bruno wants to know, how much importance do you give in your work to the sound of a place? If yes, do you treat or work with sound as a complement and an amplifier of the poetry of a place?
A very good question. And with my own personal work, sound is super important. Um, for instance, if you were, aware that the Gaelic song that accompanied the clip from the Shepherds of Berneray, not only was the song a traditional, so poetic rendition of Gaelic, it was a story about eviction. And I used imagery that kind of showed how the sheep were, as the commentary, the subtitles explain, the people in the land were overrun by the sheep. So you see these sheep literally overrunning towards the camera. So I used a lot of music, indigenous sort of local or culturally authentic music in my films, along with the ambient natural sound. And I think as well for both Ken and his brother Rick and Larry Hott, the voice of the narrator or the interview subject is it in itself a super important sound element. So I don't think that maybe answers the question directly, but it definitely sound is critical. So I'm going to go on now and add another clip. And this is really specifically about the details. And this is another scene from a Ken Burns film, and it's the story of the life of Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so I think what I better do is see if I can share. Do you all see anything?
Yeah, we see the landing page. Mhm.
Good.
Yeah, we see it.
He was a farmer, a violinist, a writer, a surveyor, a scientist, a lover of fine wines, and a restless architect who could never quite bring himself to finish his own house. He was a reluctant politician, the voice so soft he could barely make himself heard from the podium. But he helped to found America's first political party. He denounced the moral bankruptcy he saw in Europe, but delighted in the gilded salons of Paris. He was a statesman who was twice elected president of the United States, but did not think his presidency worth listing among the achievements on his gravestone. He was a lifelong champion of small government who took it upon himself to more than double the size of his country. He endured the loss of nearly everything he held dear, but somehow never lost his faith in the future. He distilled a century of Enlightenment thinking into one remarkable sentence, which began, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Yet he owned more than 200 human beings and never saw fit to free them. Thomas Jefferson was a shadow man, said John Adams. His character was like the great rivers, whose bottoms we cannot see and make no noise. He remained a puzzle even to those who thought they knew him best, embodied contradictions common to the country, whose independence it fell to him to proclaim, and words whose precise meaning Americans have debated ever since.
Okay, so whoops, let me stop this. What's going on here? Okay. Can you all see me again?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that is the first 3 minutes of the Thomas Jefferson series. And it's again not it's landscape for me. It's the interior landscape, and it's the details that I was just drawn to this. I had the luxury of being in Monticello down in Charlottesville over the course of a whole year in different seasons, and did a lot of exteriors. And the interiors, a lot of times it was just at dawn or dusk with sunlight. Very rarely did I bring in a HMI light to create kind of the illusion of sunlight. But the chessboard one morning was just lit like it was, and I just shot away at it. And you have to keep in mind also that even though I'm going exploring the space and doing a lot of different kinds of shooting framing, I had to be really careful about my ratio because this is in the days of 16 millimeter film. And Ken would always say, if every shot doesn't count, Alan, don't do it. And because it's not like video where you can just run your little SD card, fill the 32 gigs, and then erase it if you don't like it. You've got 400, $500 for a roll of film processing. And in those days, you made a work print and worked on a Steenbeck to edit it. So a whole different kind of philosophy in terms of your discipline when it came to shooting. Um, of course, the exterior landscape is for me really in a great place to be and just to meditate on light. And so I don't want to forget to show you something that is really more about the exterior um, of a place. And I got the privilege to work on one of the Ken Burns series about the history of the national parks. And I share the credit on most of the films with Ken, with another really talented cameraman. His name is Buddy Squires. I'm sure many of you have seen his work independently on other films, but you always see him as a principal DP for Ken. They've had a friendship since college and have worked together on every documentary Ken has ever made. I'm sort of the second unit in the production team. But between Buddy Squires working and my working, we covered nearly 46 of the national parks. I got to about 23 of them. And having the privilege of going into areas where most of the general population couldn't venture and having the guide of a national park ranger with us, there were some amazing moments, which I am proud to have been able to capture on film. So I'm going to go now to one storyline. This is about the Great Smokies. So let's try to make this work again. Can you all see the black screen?
Yep.
Okay, now you see my main screen?
No, still black.
No. Okay. Let's try one more time. Thought I had a good handle on this, but it's okay. It's okay. Okay, now do you see
There you go. Yep, I see it.
now a title?
Nope.
No. Huh.
No, the screen just dissolved. Went to when you clicked the bottom thing, it went back to black.
Huh. So it says the screen sharing is on paused. No idea what. Let's try stopping that. Try one more. One more screen share here.
Okay, now we see the title card.
Okay. And is that all you see?
Yeah, we see National Parks, America's Best Idea, film by Ken Burns.
Okay. I think maybe when I went full screen on my, I've been having trouble playing it. Okay. I'm just gonna move this out of the way and play. Okay. Huh. Won't play. Shoot. Oh boy. Now is it black?
Yeah.
Now is it a title?
No.
Huh. Oh boy. Sorry about this, folks.
Okay, now we see an image.
Okay, we'll leave well enough alone. Do you hear music?
No.
Why am I being? Hmm. Well, I do want to show this because I'm sorry about this, everybody. Um, what now?
We're seeing the moving image of the mountains.
No
haze
sound?
that
Oh.
ever over the mountains
Yeah, there's some sound coming in. Yep.
blends a mirage-like effect of
Yep.
great distance to objects that are but a few miles off, while those farther removed grow more and more intangible until finally the skyline blends with the sky itself. There are 7 peaks of 6,000 feet altitude that still have no name. Could anything better prove the astonishing isolation of this majestic region, though set, as it is, in the very midst of American civilization? Horace Kephart.
When Horace Kephart had first come to the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee in 1904, he was a broken man. Precociously brilliant, he had entered college at age 13, enrolled as a graduate student at Cornell when he turned 17, took a prestigious job in Yale University's library, and got married before he was 25. As head of the St. Louis Mercantile Library, he had gone on to make a name for himself as an expert on early Western explorations. But his marriage proved unhappy. Kephart turned to heavy drinking, and when he lost his job and his wife left him, taking their 6 children with her, he had suffered a breakdown. At age 42, he decided to start over in a place where he could lose himself in the wilderness and find a new purpose for his life. He chose the Smoky Mountains, which seemed, he wrote, like an Eden, still unpeopled and unspoiled.
When I went south into the mountains, I was seeking a back of beyond. I yearned for a strange land and a people that had the charm of originality. I wanted to enjoy a free life in the open air, the thrill of exploring new ground. Here, in the wildwood, I have found peace, cleanliness, health of body and mind.
The Smokies are the tallest mountains in the Appalachian chain, hosting the world's greatest diversity of plant, animal, and insect life of any region in a temperate climate zone, including more than 100 species of native trees, spruce and hemlock, giant tulip poplars, and chestnut oaks, a greater variety of trees than in all of Europe. For centuries, it had been the home of the Cherokees, until most of them were forced from their land and sent to Oklahoma on what came to be known as the Trail of Tears. In their place, Other people had settled in the remote mountaintops and hollows. Isolated farmers, moonshiners, Confederate deserters, and Union sympathizers hiding out during the Civil War. Cherokees who had evaded removal, and a collection of other people like Horace Kephart on the run for one reason or another from civilization.
Seldom during my forest exile did I feel lonesome in the daytime. But when supper would be over, and black night closed in on my hermitage, and the owls began calling all the blue devils of the woods, one needed some indoor occupation to keep him in good cheer. And that is how I came to write my first little book.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, think that you get a sense of the place, the Great Smokies. Pretty amazing environment. And again, it's one of those things where you go on location hoping for a variety of weather experiences, and I did. I had a lot of gray, flat light, and rain for about 3 days, and I was about to give up, and I said, well, I'll just give it one more day. And then that next morning, all of those incredible clouds laying in the low valleys just, opened up, and all that was shot in just one day, basically. So that's how you have to sometimes just be patient and wait for the light, wait for the right weather to experience or to gather the best imagery.
Craig has a question. I don't know if this is the right moment for it, but if you could talk a little bit about how you approach transitions. Do you anticipate? I know you mentioned when in the early Civil War clip that you showed that you didn't know how he was going to end up assembling those.
Sure.
But how aware are you of transitions when you're shooting potential transitions? How do you think about how one shot cuts to the next?
Well, again, as I was explaining, the idea of God is in the details. Whenever I'm in a scene, I always make sure I do a wide, a medium, a close up, some pans. Ken is never like zooms. So luckily, I didn't have a camera with a motorized zoom anyway, so it didn't really matter. But even with my zoom lens, I would use different focal lengths of that lens to do framing. But I'd also know that as the light changed, the shadows in a particular landscape would lengthen, and the color temperature of the light would change. So I knew that there were things I could be aware of to allow to feel the passage of time if it was important to to sort of tell the story over the course of many minutes, many hours, many days, or many years. There were these moments where you were still in the same place, but the light was different, the feel was different. I also, just reflecting on, what you do when planning to sort of try to embrace a particular location. I often would realize that even if I had been shooting and had a beautiful day of sunrise, sun in the day, and sunset, I wouldn't want to just consider it done, because the way that the atmosphere changes, depending upon even the slightest amount of moisture or cloud cover, can make all the difference in creating a different kind of feel to the landscape. So I often try to shoot in lots of different kinds of weather. And also, I insist, and this will be one of the important practices in my workshop in the fall, is that I'm always up before dawn on location, watching the pre-dawn light, the first light, and then watching the sun come up and being aware of things that are silhouetted before the sun rises, and then quickly turning around and looking at the incredible color of the very warm early sun on objects. So there are lots of little tricks that I will be able to share with my students come September.
Timing is great for Tom's question. Would your September workshop be valuable to photographers as well as cinematographers?
Oh, absolutely. As I was just saying, I am a still photographer at heart, and sometimes my um, inclination is to take a still photo of a locate of a frame and just let it run, and to add to it that natural sound that the other question referred to allow it to become live action. So yes, I do actually in my course, which it's sort of the 5-day workshop will be a condensation of a 14-week course that I've been teaching. I just retired 2 years ago, but I've been a professor at the Maryland Institute College of Art for the past 18 years. And one of the classes I would teach every year was a sense of place. And we go and look in one of our classes, we do a little kind of overview of the landscape painting of the 18th century in the American landscape, and we do a lot of looking at still photographers who've handled or been interested, Ansel Adams amongst one of the many, uh, to sort of see what the still image, how you frame to capture a powerful landscape with a still photograph. So yes, please, you're welcome as a still photographer.
And you'll be taking people out in locations around Mid-Coast, Rockport, and
Yes,
getting into that. Yeah.
and
Okay,
I'm
great.
going to need some help from the main media to give me some pointers on
Oh
good.
boy, do we have great places
I'm excited about it.
for your students to shoot.
Good.
We also have a question from Amos. It's stunning cinematography. Do you think if digital cinema was available to you and Ken Burns at that time, that the images would be as evocative as they are? Is God in the grain?
Ah, a debate that will never cease to be important to discuss. I do believe that my work in film, cinema, emulsion experience does have a different kind of quality. Um, but I do embrace the digital HD 4K world and have done many, many projects uh, using video. I do feel that one of the things that has helped me as a videographer is having been a cinematographer of film, because as I was saying before, you had 400 feet of film in a 16 sync sound camera, 11 minutes, and you could not just burn that off in 11 minutes. You had to be really, really careful with and disciplined as to where you set your shot. You waited for the light to be perfect. So videographers tend to maybe be a little more relaxed in saying, well, I'll just do the shot anyway. And in a way, it gives the editors maybe some extra choices, but often burdens them with decisions that they don't really need to make because you're there making the decision initially. So there's the pro and con of video versus film. I actually now, in my own personal work, have gone back to shooting film. I'm shooting actually double eight film, which is an old format, which is 16 millimeter film with twice the perforations. And you shoot a double eight camera running the film through one direction, and then you flip the roll over and run it back the other direction. Uh, it becomes 8 millimeter. What I do is I take it and I shoot it, and then I shoot it, flip the film over, shoot the second pass of the film with the camera held upside down, and then I project it as 16, and it's basically four quadrants of 8 millimeter on a 16 screen. Confusing, but really exciting because it allows me to experiment with emulsion and it's affordable.
Are there other questions from anyone? I'm curious, when you went out, you talk about doing chiefly second unit on the Ken Burns films. Like the shots when you're going out in the Civil War, were you shooting those on your own? Did you have an assistant, any kind of crew?
Well, another good question. Back in the old days, in the 1980s, um, with a low budget and with my being local to Maryland and being able to drive, uh, you know, up to Gettysburg and take an hour and a half from Baltimore, um, there was and I would sometimes jump in the car when I heard there was a thunderstorm, wall of thunderstorms heading towards Gettysburg. Uh, I ended up just doing a lot of the shooting alone. I had a very lightweight Sockler tripod, and I had an Aton 7 LTR, and I could literally manhandle both items, both the tripod and the camera, racing from my car up to a little knoll and film, the lightning and thunder coming my way, and make sure that I got it back in the car before it got dangerous. But it wasn't until I also certain projects when we would travel to other states, I did have the luxury of an assistant. So a couple of very dedicated AC uh, people from the Maryland, DC area would, get on the plane with me, and we would head out to the Northwest or to the Southwest or wherever we were assigned to spend a few days shooting. One of the nice things about having an assistant is that you have the ability to keep working in when the light is great while your assistant is changing film in a changing bag. So very important to have that luxury.
Couple of other questions. Melanie says, "Hi, Alan, beautiful work. I'm curious, when shooting ethnographies, how do you gain the trust of your subjects? And how do you find this relationship informs the process of making your film?"
Very good question. One of the things that I have done in my ethnographic work is I've either had the privilege of teaming up with someone who already knew the culture and had developed a strong bond with a community before I bring in a camera. I did the work in Brazil doing a film about a shrimp fishing village, and I worked with an anthropologist who had already been there for a couple years studying the community. I was in India doing a series of films about religious ritual, and the anthropologist had been there for 10 years. When I worked in Scotland, the plan was my partner Jack Shea and I were not anthropologists. We were just young, curious observers. So when we first got to the island, we didn't bring out the cameras for several weeks. We just explained to the community we were interested in making a film, but we wanted to kind of hang out and help them with the sheep and, just see what life was like before we started distracting them with, the camera, the recorder. I think that over the time, because they saw how dedicated we were, being willing to deal with rain storms where the water was literally horizontal across the landscape. We were struggling to keep our cameras dry under umbrellas. They said, well, these guys must be serious if they're willing to be out in this kind of terrible weather. So we'll give them a break and let them come with us. So, yeah, sometimes it's just spending time in a community that's the best way to gain trust.
That's great. And someone is very curious to see the shepherds of Berneray and asked if it was accessible to view somewhere. And thanks to our staff, someone just posted the link to it.
There's a link. Is it the one on Vimeo on my?
It's a player.bfi.org UK free film.
Yeah,
Watch
you
the
can
shepherds
get
of
that,
Bernard.
but I'm not sure whether people in the US can get the BFI player.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I will email main media my Vimeo link. Right now, the Shepherds of Berneray, I'm in negotiation with DER, Documentary Educational Resources in up in Boston, to have them distribute it. But right now, it's sort of I have it on my Vimeo, but it's password protected. But I'm happy to share with everybody here. But can I do that to send it to
Sure.
all main
Sure.
media?
And
And then,
we'll see they get it. Yes, that's wonderful. Generous of you. Well, we're closing in on the end of the session here, and I don't know if there's any other comments you want to make, Alan, before we wrap up?
Well, I think that for me, actually, the question about how do you embed yourself in a community, the different ways you do it can affect the way the film, um, you know, captures a place, sense of place, but also can capture your own psyche in a very, very powerful way. Lived on the island of Berneray, as I was said earlier, for 11 months, over a year and a half period, and became really close to a couple of very interesting people in the community. And over the years, I would go back. So I've been back to Scotland a dozen times to Berneray to spend a week or two with my friends there. And it dawned on me when I was in my first sabbatical, after teaching several years at MICA, that I could take some time and actually visit the idea of another film about Berneray. So that is actually what I'm in the middle of completing, is sort of a look at the island and the life of the people 40 years after finishing The Shepherds of Berneray. It is also kind of a dramatic film for me emotionally, because the main protagonist in the film, who came back from a life overseas to go back to Berneray to retire as a crofter, which is the Scottish word for farmer, basically. He decided to raise cattle instead of sheep, and during the middle of my filming, tragically, he was trampled to death by his bull. So the film, I got derailed emotionally on finishing the film, but now I'm back trying to complete it in honor of my friend, who is the subject of the film, and also someone who loved the land and loved the traditional lifestyle of being part of the Gaelic community that he lived and died in. So I'll try to keep everybody posted on when that will be finished, maybe another year.
Oh, sounds like a fascinating journey. Well, I thank you so much, Alan. It was wonderfully generous of you, and it was a rich feast for all of us, and looking at your work and hearing your ideas about how to think about place. There's much gratitude being expressed in the chat thread here.
Great.
And thank you also for offering to share the link with everybody who was here. That's terrific. So again, check out Alan's workshop. We posted the link earlier in the chat thread, and it's also on our website, coming up September 15th. So a lovely time to be in Maine. So we look forward to welcoming you to campus later this year, and take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you all.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Bye-bye.